Emma stared at the divorce papers spread across the dining table, her hands trembling despite her best efforts to remain composed. The room, once filled with laughter and shared memories, now felt hollow, a silent witness to the collapse of a life she had imagined would last forever. "Are you sure about this?" Liam's voice was low, almost hesitant, but there was an unmistakable finality in his eyes. He looked the same, yet older, wearier, like the weight of their failed marriage rested squarely on his shoulders. Emma swallowed, unable to finish. Words felt useless. 4 months, misunderstandings, family pressure, and endless arguments had eroded their love. What had once seemed unshakable had crumbled, leaving nothing but fragile pieces of a life neither of them recognized anymore. Her parents had always adored Liam. Practical, ambitious, everything they thought she deserved. But when family disapproval mixed with miscommunication and pride, it had poisoned their marriage. One heated argument had spiraled into weeks of cold silence, and slowly, the distance became unbearable. "I never wanted it to end like this," Liam admitted, his fingers tracing the edge of the paper. "I thought, maybe we could fix things." Emma shook her head. "We tried, Liam. I thought I could bend, compromise. But it never felt like enough for anyone. Especially not us." The words hurt more than the thought of being alone. Because despite the fights, despite the misunderstandings, despite the pressure, she still loved him. She always had. But love alone wasn't enough to bridge the growing chasm between them. The signing was quiet. No tears, no shouting. Just the sound of pens scratching on paper. It was clinical, almost surreal. And when it was done, the papers lay between them like a physical barrier, separating what was once theirs. "I guess, this is it," Liam said finally, standing and offering a small nod. Emma couldn't speak. She stood too, feeling the weight of everything she wasn't ready to let go of. Outside, the city carried on in oblivion, cars honking, people hurrying to unknown destinations. While Emma and Liam walked away from the life they had shared, each step echoing with the memories of laughter, arguments, and quiet moments that would haunt them for years. Months turned into years. Emma threw herself into her career, climbing steadily in the publishing world. She traveled, met new people, and tried desperately to fill the emptiness with productivity and ambition. But in the quiet moments, early mornings, late nights, solitary dinners, Liam's absence echoed louder than ever. Liam, too, had moved on outwardly. He threw himself into his work as a financial consultant, becoming successful, respected, admired. But beneath the polished exterior, he carried the same emptiness Emma did, a gnawing reminder that sometimes the heart refuses to let go, even when the mind insists it must. Neither expected to see the other again. Not really. Life had moved them onto different paths, and both had accepted the inevitability of their separation. Until fate intervened. It was a sunny Thursday morning when Emma walked into the boardroom of a major publishing partnership, only to find Liam already there, presenting a proposal. He hadn't seen her yet, but the moment their eyes met across the room, the world shifted. Time seemed to slow. The air between them felt electric. Words from the past whispered silently, resurrecting memories of late-night conversations, shared dreams, and love that had been strong enough to survive everything, almost. Neither spoke at first. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to steady her breath. Liam's fingers twitched around the pen he held, betraying the calm he tried so hard to maintain. The room was quiet except for the shuffling of papers and the murmur of colleagues, oblivious to the storm brewing at the heart of the meeting. And in that instant, both realized that what had ended years ago had never truly disappeared. The love between them was still there, buried beneath the layers of pain, pride, and separation. The question now was clear. Could they bridge the gap that had grown between them, or had too much time passed for second chances? Emma's palms were clammy as she adjusted the strap of her laptop bag. The conference room smelled faintly of fresh coffee and polished wood, a mundane scent, yet her heart raced as if it were anything but ordinary. She wasn't expecting Liam today. She had no idea he was even involved in this project. And yet, there he was, standing confidently at the head of the table, reviewing spreadsheets and charts, completely unaware that the woman who had once shared his life was about to walk in. The moment their eyes met, her breath caught. He froze mid-gesture, a pen hovering above a paper, before the faintest flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Emma," he said softly, as if speaking her name could bridge the years that had separated them. She swallowed, forcing a professional smile. "Liam." The room was full of colleagues and clients, unaware of the silent storm brewing between them. Emma cleared her throat and stepped into the room. "I hear we're collaborating on this new publishing initiative. Looks like we'll be working together." Liam nodded slowly, still holding her gaze for a fraction too long. "It seems so," he said, his tone calm, but something behind his eyes betrayed the emotions he refused to voice. Emma felt a rush of conflicting feelings, the old warmth, the familiar pull, and the sting of memories that refused to fade. She clenched her fists lightly, determined not to let history cloud her focus. The meeting began formally, with both of them presenting different parts of the project. Emma outlined marketing strategies, potential readership demographics, and editorial approaches, while Liam discussed funding, logistics, and projections. Their colleagues watched in admiration as the two ex-spouses worked side by side, seamlessly complementing each other's skills. But beneath the surface, every glance, every subtle gesture was loaded with unspoken tension. At one point, Liam reached for a document on the table, his hand brushing hers. Emma felt a spark, an old, familiar jolt, and quickly pulled back, hoping no one noticed. Liam's fingers lingered for a second too long, as though he wanted to say something, anything, but the professional setting held him back. After the meeting, the clients left, praising the team's efficiency. Emma and Liam remained behind, alone for the first time since their reunion. "Look," Liam began, breaking the silence. "I didn't expect this either. Seeing you here. It's a surprise." Emma folded her arms, keeping her voice neutral. "Life has a way of putting people back in your path, doesn't it?" He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Seems like it." They walked to the elevator in silence, the unspoken words hanging between them like an invisible barrier. Emma wanted to say something, apologize, explain, even confess that she hadn't stopped thinking about him, but the years of hurt held her tongue hostage. Finally, Liam broke the tension. "Do you remember when we used to brainstorm ideas like this together?" Emma's lips curved into a small bittersweet smile. "I do. You were always stubborn about your numbers, and I was always stubborn about the story." He chuckled softly. "And somehow, we always found a middle ground." For a brief moment, Emma felt the old connection, the camaraderie that had once made their partnership, both personal and professional, so strong. It was intoxicating, but she reminded herself, the past wasn't a safe place to dwell. The elevator dinged, signaling their arrival at the lobby. Liam looked at her, his eyes searching. "Emma, I know this is complicated, but maybe," he trailed off, as if unsure whether to continue. She shook her head gently. "Not now, Liam. Not yet." He nodded, understanding in his gaze, and they stepped out into the bustling lobby, side by side but emotionally worlds apart. That evening, Emma sat in her apartment, the day replaying in her mind like a movie. She couldn't shake the image of Liam's eyes, intense, familiar, full of a longing she recognized all too well. She had built a life without him, carved out a space of independence and strength, yet the spark that had never fully died now blazed anew. Emma realized, with both fear and anticipation, that this project wasn't just a professional challenge. It was a test of her heart, one that would force her to confront the feelings she thought she had buried forever. And deep down, she knew that working with Liam again would not be simple. It would be messy, emotional, and unpredictable. But maybe, just maybe, it could also be the beginning of a second chance. The office was quiet late that evening, the city lights glowing softly through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Emma sat at her desk, reviewing the latest drafts of the publishing proposals, but her focus was fractured. Every time she glanced up, she half expected to see Liam standing there, analyzing the numbers with that same intensity she remembered from years ago. And then he did. "I thought I'd find you here," he said, his tone casual, though his eyes betrayed a subtle curiosity, maybe even longing. Emma's heart skipped a beat, though she forced herself to meet his gaze evenly. "Burning the midnight oil as always? Someone has to make sure the numbers add up," he said, leaning against the doorway with that easy confidence she had once loved. "But I could ask you the same thing." She shrugged lightly. "Deadlines wait for no one. And neither do editors or investors." He smiled faintly. That small familiar curve of his lips tugged at something in her chest, a memory of laughter-filled nights and whispered plans. She shook her head, trying to dismiss it. "We're professionals. Let's keep it that way." Liam stepped closer, the faintest hint of tension in his posture. Professional, yes. But it doesn't mean we have to ignore the chemistry that's still here. Emma's eyes widened slightly. Chemistry? She asked, trying to sound stern but failing. Her voice softened despite herself. Yes, he said, meeting her gaze directly. The same spark that used to make you impossible to ignore. Her pulse quickened. The truth was undeniable. It had never gone away. The tension that had lingered since their reunion earlier in the week was now impossible to ignore. She could feel it in the air, thick and electric, like the calm before a storm. Emma swallowed hard. You're not making this easier, Liam. I'm not trying to, he admitted, taking another small step closer. But I can't pretend it's not there. They stood only a few feet apart, and for the first time since their divorce, Emma allowed herself to remember the closeness, the comfort, the way he had once fit perfectly into her life. She shook the thought away, reminding herself why they had ended. Family pressures, misunderstandings, and the slow erosion of trust had driven a wedge between them. And yet here they were, together again, and nothing had changed about the way he made her feel. A knock on the office door startled them both. It was one of their colleagues, reminding them of a late-night client call. Emma took a deep breath and nodded. We'll continue this tomorrow, she said, her voice steady, though her heart raced. Yes, Liam agreed, his eyes lingering a moment longer than necessary before he turned to leave. The next morning, working side by side on the project, Emma felt the spark again. Smaller, subtle, but persistent. Every shared glance, every accidental touch over documents, made her pulse quicken. At one point, Liam leaned over her shoulder to point something out in the proposal. Their hands brushed briefly, and Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. Careful, she murmured, trying to sound casual. I'm careful, he said softly, his voice low enough that she felt it vibrating through her chest. But some things can't be controlled. She looked up at him, heart pounding, realizing the truth of his words. For all the distance, all the time apart, and all the pain they had endured, she could not deny the attraction, the undeniable pull, that still existed between them. After work, they found themselves at a small cafe, discussing project details over coffee. The conversation flowed easily, reminiscent of old times, but layered with unspoken tension. You haven't changed much, Liam said, smiling wryly. Still stubborn, still passionate about what you believe in. And you? Emma asked, raising an eyebrow. Still trying to control everything? He laughed, but there was warmth in it now, a softness she hadn't noticed before. Maybe I'm learning. Slowly. For a moment, silence fell between them, comfortable but charged. Emma felt the pull stronger than ever, the temptation to let the past wash over them and see where the sparks might lead. But she reminded herself, caution first, heart second. They had history, mistakes, and pride to navigate before anything else. And yet, she knew, deep down, that something had begun again, something neither time nor distance could erase. The sparks were reignited. And this time, neither of them could pretend they weren't there. Emma's phone buzzed relentlessly that afternoon. Client emails, project updates, and reminders stacked in a digital pile that seemed impossible to clear. But every buzz made her heart skip a beat, not from work stress, but from a familiar ping that belonged to Liam. He hadn't messaged her, at least not yet, but she felt his presence everywhere. The memory of yesterday's sparks, the brush of his hand over hers, lingered like a quiet flame she wasn't ready to extinguish. Yet beneath the warmth, there was something darker. Old wounds, unhealed and raw, gnawed at her. Misunderstandings and family interference had ended their marriage once. Could she trust her heart not to be broken again? Later, they met in the conference room to finalize some presentation slides for the investors. Liam was unusually quiet, flipping through the documents with a tense precision Emma hadn't seen before. Is something wrong? She asked gently, sensing the tightness in his shoulders. He glanced up, his expression unreadable. I don't know if I should be here, he admitted, voice low. Seeing you again. It's harder than I thought it would be. Emma's chest tightened. She had felt the same way, though she would never admit it aloud. We're professionals, Liam. We have a project to complete. Let's focus on that. He nodded, but the shadows in his eyes betrayed the truth. They had unfinished business, memories of love, regret, and the mistakes that had pulled them apart, and it made every interaction charged with tension. A knock on the door interrupted them. Emma's mother's voice carried through the intercom. "Emma, darling, can we talk?" "Now." Emma froze. Her mother had always been a source of pressure in her relationship with Liam. Family opinions, expectations, subtle manipulations. They had driven a wedge between them before. "Tell her I'm busy," Emma said curtly, trying to maintain composure. Liam's eyes met hers. "Do you want me to?" "No," she said firmly, shaking her head. "This is my mess to handle." The tension between them shifted, from the spark of attraction to the weight of their past. They had to navigate not only their own emotions but also the lingering interference of others who had once controlled the course of their relationship. After the meeting, Liam caught up with her in the hallway. "You know," he said softly, "your mother was always difficult about us." Emma exhaled, running a hand through her hair. "Difficult is putting it mildly. But I can't let that dictate what happens now." "Not anymore." He nodded slowly, his gaze lingering on her. "I know. I guess I'm just scared. Scared of history repeating itself. I don't want to lose you again." Emma felt her heart tighten. She had wanted to hear those words for years, yet the timing, the intensity of their work together, the fragile progress they had made them dangerous. "Liam," she began, but he held up a hand. "No apologies," he said. "Just honesty. That's all I can offer." For a moment, silence wrapped around them. The hallway was empty, the world outside oblivious to the storm of emotions between them. And in that quiet, Emma realized that love was no longer simple. It wasn't just desire, or habit, or nostalgia. It was history, wounds, and hope all tangled together, and it could either destroy them or bring them closer than ever. That evening, Emma sat at her desk, reviewing slides and notes. Her thoughts drifted to Liam. The sparks from earlier that day lingered, but so did the unease. Could they rebuild trust? Could they truly reconcile when so many old wounds remained? Her phone buzzed with a reminder. Project deadline tomorrow. She smiled faintly, realizing that some things hadn't changed. Life didn't pause for emotions. Love didn't wait for closure. And if they were to have a second chance, they had to face everything. Old wounds, lingering misunderstandings, and the pull of their hearts, head on. And deep down, Emma knew it wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in years, she also knew that the risk was worth taking. Because the sparks were still there. And they were waiting to ignite. The office felt smaller than usual, or maybe it was just the closeness that seemed to grow between them each day. Emma and Liam had been spending long hours together, reviewing marketing campaigns, editing manuscripts, and coordinating with authors. What should have been purely professional time had become a test of restraint, of patience, and of every unspoken emotion they carried. Emma focused on her laptop, pretending the spreadsheet before her held all her attention. But every time Liam leaned over to point something out, his shoulder brushing hers, her breath hitched. "I think if we adjust the release schedule, we can maximize pre-orders," Liam said quietly, hovering a little too close. Emma nodded, but her mind scrambled. "Yes, that makes sense," she said, forcing herself to concentrate. He lingered for a moment, just a fraction longer than necessary. The faint scent of his cologne reminded her of old mornings when coffee had been shared in their apartment, and quiet laughter had filled the air. She shook the memory away, trying to maintain her professional composure. "Emma," Liam said softly, almost hesitant, "can we take a short break?" She looked up, meeting his eyes. There was something in them, vulnerability, longing, perhaps a hint of regret. She swallowed, nodding. "Sure." They stepped out into the small balcony that overlooked the city. The air was crisp, carrying the faint hum of traffic below. Silence stretched between them, comfortable yet charged with tension. "I've missed this," Liam said finally, his gaze drifting to the skyline. "Us, working together. Even though it's complicated now." Emma turned to him. "Complicated is an understatement. We have history, and that history isn't exactly forgiving." He chuckled softly, a sound that tugged at her chest. "No, it isn't. But maybe that's why it's worth it." Her pulse quickened. Every word, every glance seemed to ignite the old connection that had never fully faded. And yet, she hesitated. Their divorce hadn't been easy. Their love had been tested, stretched, and ultimately broken. Could she allow herself to feel it again? Liam took a cautious step closer, reducing the space between them. Emma, I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes. But being near you now, seeing what we once had, I realize I've never stopped caring. Her heart pounded. She wanted to close the distance, to let herself feel what she had denied for so long. But caution held her back. I've built a life without you, Liam, she said quietly. I've learned to survive, to thrive. I can't risk being hurt again. He reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. The contact was electric, sending warmth through her entire body. I'm not asking you to forget the past. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that we could try again. Carefully. Slowly. Emma's chest tightened. The temptation was immense, the pull of familiarity, of love she had never truly abandoned. But years of pride, pain, and independence demanded she tread carefully. I don't know if I can, she admitted, her voice trembling. Then let me earn your trust, Liam said earnestly. One day at a time. No pressure. Just us figuring it out. They stood in silence, the city stretching endlessly behind them. Emma felt the sparks between them, undeniable and consuming. Every instinct told her to retreat, to protect her heart. But another stronger instinct, the one that had loved Liam through everything, urged her to step closer. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, caught in the delicate balance between fear and desire. Finally, Emma exhaled, letting a small, cautious smile break through. One day at a time, she whispered. Liam's eyes softened, and he nodded. One day at a time. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a resolution. It wasn't even a promise. But it was the first step toward reclaiming something they had lost. Toward confronting their feelings, their history, and the undeniable sparks that refused to die. And for the first time in years, Emma felt a flicker of hope. Because sometimes, being close to someone again was the only way to realize that love, no matter how broken, could still ignite. Emma had thought the hardest part was over. Working closely with Liam, navigating the sparks and the tension, had been challenging, but it had also been exhilarating. She allowed herself small moments of hope, moments where the past didn't feel quite so heavy. But life, it seemed, had a way of reminding her that old wounds never fully healed. It began with a call from her mother, the kind that carried more authority than concern. Emma, darling, her mother said, voice smooth but laced with underlying tension. I hear you've been spending a lot of time with Liam. Emma stiffened. Yes, we're working on a project together. That's all. Her mother's sigh was heavy, almost theatrical. I know your heart still remembers him. But you must be careful. You don't want history repeating itself. Emma's patience thinned. History didn't repeat itself, Mom. We ended our marriage for good reasons. But maybe some reasons are worth reconsidering, her mother said softly, almost too soft. For the right man, a woman can forgive. Even if she swore she wouldn't. Emma hung up, frustration simmering. Her mother's words weren't malicious, yet they carried the weight of manipulation and expectation she had battled her whole life. She didn't need warnings, she needed clarity, and right now, her past was muddying her present. Later that evening, she found herself at the office long after everyone else had left. Liam was still there, reviewing the final draft of the proposal. The glow from his laptop illuminated his face, highlighting the concentration etched into his features. Burning the midnight oil again? She asked, stepping softly into the room. He looked up, his expression softening when he saw her. Seems like we're both creatures of habit, he said with a faint smile. Emma hesitated, then spoke carefully. Liam, my mother called me today. He raised an eyebrow. And she's concerned about us. About me, about history. Well, she never liked us together. Liam's jaw tightened slightly, a shadow crossing his face. I guessed as much. Your mother's always been protective. But she can't dictate your choices forever. I know, Emma said softly. But it's hard to shake off the old judgments. The misunderstandings. The mistakes. I feel like they follow us, no matter how far we've come. He closed the laptop and stood, taking a step closer. Emma, listen to me. The past will always be there. Old wounds, family opinions, regrets, they're part of life. But they don't have to define what happens between us now. Her chest tightened. His words were reassuring, yet the weight of everything they had endured pressed on her shoulders. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that the sparks between them could survive the shadows of their past. But then he spoke again, softly, almost a whisper. "I've kept secrets too, Emma. Things I never told you back then. Things that might have changed everything." Her heart skipped a beat. Secrets. He hesitated. "Yes. Not lies, exactly. But things I thought I couldn't share. Things I was too proud to admit. And now, I think you deserve to know." Emma felt a mix of anticipation and dread. The past had already hurt them both. Could these new revelations tear open old wounds, or could they finally offer the understanding they needed to rebuild? "Tell me," she said quietly. Liam took a deep breath, his gaze steady. "It's about why I didn't fight harder back then. About why I let misunderstandings grow. Why I let your family's opinions sway my decisions. I wanted to protect you, in my own misguided way. But instead, I hurt you. I regret it every day." Emma's eyes softened, her own emotions raw. The truth she had waited for, acknowledgement, honesty and accountability, was finally in front of her. "Liam," she whispered, her voice trembling, "we can't erase the past. But maybe we can face it together. Carefully, step by step." He nodded, relief and hope mingling in his eyes. "Step by step," he echoed. And in that moment, with old secrets unveiled and lingering wounds acknowledged, they realized that the path forward wouldn't be easy, but it could be theirs to walk together if they dared to trust again. The weekend brought a rare quiet to the city, but for Emma, silence only amplified the turmoil in her chest. Thoughts of Liam refused to be ignored. Every text, every glance, every shared laugh at the office replayed like a loop she couldn't escape. She had promised herself caution. One day at a time, she reminded herself. Step by step. But her heart had other plans. Liam arrived at the office early on Monday, carrying a stack of manuscripts and a tired but genuine smile. "Good morning," he said softly, noticing her already at her desk. "Morning," Emma replied, forcing normalcy into her tone. But as the day progressed, professionalism became increasingly difficult. They were forced to spend hours side by side, reviewing chapters, analyzing target audiences, and planning marketing strategies. Each time their hands brushed over a page or a pen, the spark that had ignited weeks ago flared brighter. At one point, Liam leaned over to point out a typo. Their faces were so close that Emma could feel his breath brush her cheek. Heat surged through her, and she quickly looked away, forcing herself to focus on the text in front of her. "You're avoiding me," he said quietly, almost teasingly, though his eyes held something deeper. "I'm not avoiding anything," she lied, her voice firm but her pulse betraying her. "Yes, you are," he said softly, his tone no longer teasing. "You're trying to protect yourself, your heart, and maybe me too." Emma's chest tightened. He was right. Every instinct told her to retreat, to protect the fragile sense of independence and safety she had fought so hard to build since their divorce. But the pull toward him was irresistible. "I can't afford to get hurt again," she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam reached out, his hand brushing hers gently. "Neither can I," he said. "But maybe, just maybe, the risk is worth it." She looked into his eyes and saw the same longing, the same hesitation, the same vulnerability she felt herself. It was terrifying, but it was also irresistible. Later that evening, they found themselves alone in the office again, reviewing the final draft for the investors. The quiet hum of the city outside created a cocoon around them. "I've missed this," Liam said softly, glancing at her. "Not just the work, but you." "Even when things were broken, I never stopped caring." Emma's throat tightened. "Liam, we can't ignore the past. The mistakes, the misunderstandings, the family pressures, it's all still there." "I know," he admitted, "but ignoring it won't make it go away. Facing it together might." The words struck a chord deep within her. She wanted to believe him, to let go of the fear and embrace the possibilities. But hesitation lingered, wrapping around her like a protective shield. "Liam," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what if we fail again?" He stepped closer, his hand gently brushing her arm. "Then we'll fail together. But at least we'll try, and at least we'll be honest with each other this time." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. For so long, honesty had been missing between them, replaced by pride, fear, and miscommunication. Now, standing here, the truth was raw and beautiful. The office door opened suddenly, startling both of them. It was a colleague, unaware of the tension lingering in the room. Emma and Liam quickly separated, masks of professionalism snapping back into place. But as they returned to their work, the energy between them had shifted. Something unspoken had passed, a promise, a recognition, a spark too powerful to ignore. Emma realized that moving forward would be complicated. They still had old wounds, lingering doubts, and family pressures waiting in the wings. But for the first time in years, she also realized that her heart wasn't afraid to hope. Because sometimes, the strongest connections are the ones that survive distance, time, and heartbreak, and the ones worth taking a risk for. And in that office, late into the evening, Emma allowed herself to hope. The weekend was supposed to be quiet, a brief reprieve from work and meetings. But Emma's peace was shattered when her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "We need to talk. Nah, don't ignore me." Emma sighed, gripping the phone tightly. Family pressure had never truly gone away. It had only lain dormant, ready to resurface at the most inconvenient moments. She knew she couldn't avoid it. Not anymore. When she arrived at her parents' house, the air inside felt heavy. Her mother's eyes were sharp, her posture commanding, and her father's quiet disapproval loomed in the background. "Emma," her mother began, her voice calm but firm, "we need to discuss Liam. I know you've been spending a lot of time with him." Emma squared her shoulders. "Yes, we're working on a project together. But that doesn't change anything else. I'm not a child anymore." Her mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "It's not about being a child. It's about protecting you. You need to consider the risks. You've been hurt once. Do you want it to happen again?" Emma's heart pounded. "I can't live my life avoiding love because of past mistakes. Liam and we're figuring things out. Carefully. One day at a time." Her father finally spoke, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Emma, we only want what's best. Just be careful. He's not the same man you married before." Emma's eyes softened, realizing the concern beneath the caution. "I know. And I appreciate it. But I have to make my own choices." Later that evening, she returned to the office, still carrying the weight of the confrontation. Liam was waiting, papers spread across his desk. His eyes lifted when she entered, immediately noticing the tension in her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. Emma shook her head. "It's nothing. Just family. They have opinions as usual." He nodded knowingly. "I guessed as much. Your parents have always been protective. But it's our lives, Emma. We have to navigate this together, not let the past dictate us." She sat down, letting out a deep breath. "I know. But it's hard. Even now, after all this time, the misunderstandings and judgments from before still linger." Liam reached across the desk, his hand covering hers. "Then let's clear them. Talk about everything. The past, the mistakes, the regrets. No hiding, no assumptions. Just honesty." Emma felt her chest tighten. This was exactly what they needed. Years of silence, of unresolved tension, had built walls between them. It was time to tear them down. They began to talk, slowly peeling back the layers of the past. Liam confessed the reasons behind decisions he had made during their marriage. The pride, the fear of confrontation, and the misunderstandings that had driven them apart. Emma listened, her own heart opening as she shared her side. The feeling of being unheard, the isolation she had experienced, and the pressure from her family that had made her question herself. 4 hours they spoke, sometimes laughing at the absurdities, sometimes pausing in silence as the weight of the revelation settled. And in that honesty, something shifted. The walls between them weakened. The past no longer loomed as a threat, but as a foundation. Imperfect, yes, but real. And in that reality, they began to see the possibility of moving forward. By the time they left the office that night, the city lights shimmered like a promise of new beginnings. Emma walked beside Liam, feeling the spark that had lingered all along, tempered now with understanding and clarity. "I don't know what comes next," she admitted softly. "Neither do I," he replied. "But we'll face it together. One day at a time, remember." Emma smiled, a sense of relief and hope washing over her. One day at a time. And for the first time in years, the past didn't feel like a chain. It felt like a map, guiding them toward a future they could choose together. The office was quiet, bathed in the golden glow of the late afternoon sun. Emma sat at her desk, reviewing the final touches on the publishing project she and Liam had been tirelessly perfecting. It had been weeks since they confronted their past, and the tension that once threatened to undo them had softened into a quiet understanding. Liam entered, carrying 2 coffees, a small knowing smile playing on his lips. "Thought you might need this," he said, placing 1 cup beside her laptop. Emma smiled softly. "You're predictable," she teased, though her heart fluttered at the gesture. "Maybe," he said, leaning against the desk, "or maybe I just know what works." They worked in companionable silence, the occasional glance or brush of hands sending sparks that no one else in the office would notice but that both of them felt acutely. And yet, beneath the calm, both knew that today wasn't just about work, it was about what came next. Finally, Liam closed his laptop and looked at her, his expression serious but tender. "Emma, we've faced a lot lately. Family pressure, misunderstandings, old mistakes. Everything that drove us apart. And yet, here we are, stronger, more honest, and still connected." Emma's chest tightened. "We are. And it's not easy. I'm still afraid, Liam. Afraid of losing us. Afraid of making the same mistakes." He reached across the desk, taking her hand in his. The simple contact, warm and reassuring, carried the weight of years of longing and regret. "I know," he said softly. "But we don't have to be afraid anymore. We've learned. We've grown. And we have a choice, to let the past control us, or to create something new together." Her eyes filled with tears she hadn't realized she'd been holding back. I want to try," she whispered. "I want to try with you." Liam's smile was radiant, relief and love shining through. "Then let's do it. One step at a time, no rush, no expectations, just us." Over the next few weeks, they slowly began to rebuild their connection. Workdays were still long, and collaboration required focus, but they found moments to share laughter, memories, and even gentle touches that spoke louder than words. Each small gesture strengthened their bond, reaffirming that the love they had once thought lost was not only alive but stronger for having survived the trials of the past. One evening, after finalizing the publishing project, Liam suggested a walk. The city was quiet, streetlights casting soft reflections on the wet pavement from a recent rain. They strolled side by side, hands occasionally brushing until, without a word, Liam slipped his hand into hers. Emma didn't pull away. Instead, she intertwined her fingers with his, letting herself feel the warmth, the safety, and the love she had fought so hard to protect. "I never stopped loving you," Liam admitted, his voice low and steady, carrying a vulnerability that made her heart ache with recognition. "I never stopped either," Emma said softly, leaning slightly into him. "Even when I thought I could. Even when I tried to move on." They walked in silence, the city around them fading into the background. Sometimes words weren't necessary. The connection between them spoke louder than anything else could. Finally, Liam stopped and turned to face her, the glow of the streetlights highlighting the intensity in his eyes. "Emma, I know we've been hurt before, but I want to be with you. Fully. No secrets, no regrets. Just us. Can we do this?" Emma searched his face, seeing the honesty and love reflected there. The fear was still present, but it was overshadowed by the hope, trust, and the undeniable pull of their hearts. "Yes," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Yes, we can." He smiled, and in that moment, all the years of pain, separation, and longing melted away. They embraced, holding each other tightly, knowing that this time, their love was grounded in honesty, understanding, and a choice to move forward together. The city lights sparkled around them, reflecting the promise of a new beginning. Emma and Liam had confronted their past, faced their fears, and emerged stronger. Their hearts rekindled, their love renewed. And as they walked hand in hand into the night, both knew that while life would bring challenges, together they could face anything. Because some loves, no matter how broken, are worth fighting for. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.